slide the whole table, maybe?
And then if I move it.
What have I connected to?
Plug.
Right here.
That's not gonna go. Oh, make sure I'm plugging the speaker.
Oh, is that the?
Yeah, that's the speaker. It's gonna be different.
Maybe let's see if we set it there. Okay, Mr. Ray, can you try speaking to see if they can hear you better now?
Yes, is this working?
But she didn't always.
Is that better, Gary?
Can you hear now? Hi, Jim.
Hey, again, good evening.
We're trying to get you so they can hear you.
Can you hear me or not?
I can hear you fine. Yeah, you can have this one. And maybe if I just hold the speaker there. You can have this, that's no problem.
Yeah, that won't come out.
I tried. Okay, this is the best I think we're getting. Try it now.
I felt threatened.
Can you all hear better now?
I can
Can
hear
you hear
fine.
better now? No.
You want to sit over here? You want to trade places?
No, it's all right.
You want to borrow one of these?
Sorry.
I want to borrow Frank's.
His are probably better than mine.
Maybe you could just set that on there and see.
Go ahead and try speaking, Mr. Ray.
Yes. Is this better?
Yeah.
That's better.
Okay. So to begin, I think we need to recognize the town and its staff for working to get these audits done, because we're digging up a lot of old information and asking questions about things that happened a relatively long time ago. We also want to say that we appreciate the amount of work that the mayor is doing in terms of coordinating the audits and answering our questions. It's not in any of these letters, but we believe that the town should consider setting up an audit committee to interact and interface with us to determine that the audit process is going fairly smoothly, to determine what is missing, to determine that our recommendations are reviewed and either implemented, or determined that there is no cost benefit to implementation. And finally, really to determine if we, as the town's auditors, are doing the work we should be doing. So again, we suggest that the town look at the formation of an audit committee. The final thing I want to say as we start this process is, obviously the town is late with its audits, but this is not the first time this has happened. If you go back and you look in, the 2000 teens, you'll see the property taxes were withheld during that period, again, because of late audits. I think the best place to start with this presentation is with the material weakness letter. And that letter basically says material weakness in the middle of the page and discusses these weaknesses. A material weakness is the most severe comment the town can get in terms of its internal controls. It says that the internal control process is not strong enough to avoid material misstatements occurring in the financial statements. So the first thing I want to emphasize to the board, although you probably already know it, is what we're saying in this letter is fairly important. and has significant ramifications for the town. The town did not, or has not, in any of the audits we have done, received an unmodified opinion. The audits have had a scope limitation because we've not been able to determine as your auditors what the correct balances are. In some cases, what the transactions were for. The material weaknesses in your audit, and I don't mean to belabor a point, but I'm going to go through these because I think they're important. Cash balances are overstated. Because we have no reconciliations, I cannot tell you the exact amount of the overstatement, but the book balance, the amounts on the city's financial records, is approximately $80,000 higher than the balances in the bank. So obviously, the city does not have $80,000 of resources that it may have thought it had when preparing its budget or making financial decisions. Not all of the cash transactions were recorded. In 2021, electronic deposits and withdrawals, the town just simply stopped recording those in their general ledger. For 22, we restated the beginning balances for the effect of these cash transactions. The net of all of these was about a positive $24,000. The same issue occurred in 2022, that not all of the cash transactions were recorded. The town needs to make reconciling its bank statements a top priority, amongst other things related to the audit. There is no listing of utility receivables by customer or by the fund it belongs to. It's our understanding that that report can be done on an immediate basis, but that the town cannot go back today and get a report of receivables by customer as of December 31. The natural gas receivable is almost 20% of its annual revenues. That sounds high, but again, given the time of year, it might be right. Until we get those reports, we can't tell what the correct balance should be. The town does not have a list of accounts receivable, amounts owed to vendors after the end of the fiscal year, or accrued liabilities. In prior years, beginning balances were rolled forward. For example, in 2020, they were rolled forward from in November of 2023. In that roll forward, there was $167,000 of water accounts payable, which was recorded on the general ledger. That is about the amount of expenses for that fund for the year. So obviously, this number right now in 22 is overstated. Once the payable to the town engineer is recorded, the town may owe, or the water fund may have accounts payable of more than $150,000. There is also accrued liabilities, which are amounts owed to employees or amounts owed to others. There is no listing of these amounts either, but one of the accounts in the general fund is an accrued liability to the enterprise funds for receipts of enterprise revenues. That balance was over $50,000 at the end of 2022. That account probably should not be there. It's probably not owed to anybody. So the town needs to go through its records again and determine and book the correct amount of accrued liabilities. Excuse me. Um, I'm sorry, excuse me again. There is no listing of capital assets. The town has been unable to provide a listing of capital assets since 2016. When doing our work, we're finding that there are some additions. Those get recorded and depreciation gets rolled forward year to year. This is a pretty significant area for the town because coming up with capital assets or fixed asset balances is going to be difficult. We have contacted some of your predecessor auditors and nobody has a list. The town needs to go and try to determine by observance what capital assets it has. It then needs to try to determine when that capital asset was built or purchased, and then it needs to estimate a historical cost for that asset. So you can see from those steps, this is not going to be a very easy process. But again, in order to get a clean, unmodified audit opinion, this is going to have to be done. The thing that's going to have to start occurring in the 2023 audit, although we started it in 2021, is to determine how much of an asset there is for the new water systems. This year, in 2022, there was no listing of vacation owed to town staff. However, I believe Sarah's put that together and we will use that for the 23 audit. The volunteer firefighter plan is pretty small, pretty immaterial. And if I was prioritizing things to do, this would be pretty low on the list. But there's a GASB statement that says that the plan's assets and liabilities for future pension payments needs to be reported and footnoted in your financials. That requires an actuary to make some determinations and tell the town what those numbers are. That is a summation of what material weaknesses we found. And so I would like to go on to the other recommendations in that report on page 3. The first one is the town needs to monitor its financial health. It may indicate in the 2025 audit that the town does not have enough assets or owes so much money to others that it may not be able to continue in existence through the end of 2026. The town is going to need to determine if it can operate in future fiscal years. And if not, that needs, again, to be disclosed in your financial statements. In order to be able to do that, obviously, the town needs correct financial statement numbers to determine where it is at. The general ledger and the town's financial records are missing so much information that we don't know what the final numbers will look like. There are some revenues that are, for example, for the year ending 12/31/22, that are received in 23, but should be recognized as revenues in 22. We've talked about the cash problems. We've talked about the accounts payable problems. Again, we just don't know what the final numbers are going to look like. But the town and you as the board of trustees are making financial decisions on which you have not had good financial information for a very long period of time. The town needs to begin to look at its documentation for the 2025 audit, even though we're still talking about 2022. There is a requirement of local government grantees that if they receive more than $750,000 in federal financial assistance or loans or a combination thereof, they have to have a single audit. That may be required for 23, 24, or 25. Again, it's dependent on the timing of the expenditures and the loan proceeds. The problem with a single audit is we, as your financial statement auditors, are required to audit the town's compliance with grant and loan requirements, and to also audit its internal control systems to see if it can administer those grants. If we had had to do a single audit for the year ending 2022, we would have had to report material weaknesses to the feds in that report. Obviously, it goes without saying that might cause issues with the USDA. And the other thing that occurs in the government arena is before the feds give anybody grant funds, they're supposed to assess that entity's ability to administer those funds. These reports and other issues may result in the town not getting grants that it needs because the federal government has determined it can't administer them. Again, and I know I said it earlier, but I'll re-emphasize it. The first and most important thing to do is get a handle on cash, and you cannot do that until it is reconciled. What we would suggest is starting with 12/31/24 and trying to determine what the outstanding deposits and the outstanding checks are by perhaps going back to September of 24 and looking at what transactions and checks have not yet cleared the bank. In this letter, excuse me one second. In this letter on the page 4, we start talking about compensating controls. These are controls. The town's obviously too small to be able to have the set of controls based on segregation of duties. You and everybody else your size just don't have the staff to do it. As a result, you need to put into place compensating controls. And that basically is a review of financial operations and reconciliations and things such as this. What I would say to you, perhaps in a comment that is fairly snarky, is the town needs these controls so that it does not end up in the World Journal talking about its utility billing systems like one of your neighboring cities. It also needs these controls to ensure that it never has problems completing audits or giving town management and the board of trustees the information they need to operate. Once the numbers are good or starting to get good, the board of trustees and management should receive monthly financial reports of the balance sheet, the income statement, and budget to actual statements. If the budget to actual statements appear to be way different in terms of what is budgeted and what is expended, that could be a problem either with the budget, with the way actual transactions are recorded, or a combination of both. But it's a fairly good control and an important control to ensure that these two amounts are syncing up. There's a little more information that is needed on invoices. We would suggest that invoices include who approved them, what account they are charged to, and the check number or the electronic transaction that paid those amounts. Are there any questions about this report before we go over the required communication to the board from the audit process? Okay, the second document that I would like to briefly look at is the letter to those charged with governance. And the first underlined item on that is significant audit matters. This is required communication to the board after the Enron scandal to make sure that we as your auditors report what we did to the board and they understand what occurred and that there was no collusion or problems with the information presented to the board. This is a checklist. No answers are what you would expect. First of all, under the significant accounting policies, the town did implement GASB Statement 87, which requires the town to take its operating leases and book the assets involved in those leases as a town's asset and to record long-term debt. As a result, the town now has an asset for its postage meter and the copier. All financial statements include estimates because we don't have the first estimate is how long capital assets are going to last. Is a vehicle that you purchase going to last 5 years or 10 years? That's an estimate that affects the amount of depreciation expense recorded. The second estimate, and although again it's a very small plan, are the actuarial assumptions about the firefighter pension plan. In other words, how long the firefighter is going to collect benefits, what kind of rate of return the pension plan can receive on its assets. All of those type of issues are actuarial assumptions that need to be reported in the financial statement, and again are also a significant estimate. In the middle of page 2 of this letter, you can see a listing of the audit adjustments we proposed. The good news is this year, unlike prior years, there were no issues with beginning balances. Total audit proposed adjusting entries were almost $340,000. This is almost half the expenditures of the town. So the audit adjustments are still a fairly significant and fairly large number. The other thing I will tell you that is in this letter is that we had no disagreements with management about accounting issues, but we did report that overall getting the information we need was an audit difficulty. That, in a brief summary, is the letter required to be reported to you in terms of this audit. Before I briefly go over the financial statements, are there any questions on this letter? Finally, again, I want to look at the financial statements for just a few minutes. And as I said before, the town received a limited scope audit opinion and has since 2019. It goes without saying that we as your auditors don't have much confidence in the numbers that are reported, and that when the town gets good numbers, they may not look anything like what is here. One of the things we would suggest the town doing is consult with its attorney to determine if the $60,000 that is in the pension trust fund can be used for operations. Your trust payment, the pension payments for the year are $975 a month. So that $60,000 is not needed to make next year's payments. But again, it could be used for operations. if I were a member of this board, here are the things I would be concerned about in this financial statement. Obviously, the first issue is modified scope limitation opinions. The second thing is the water fund has current liabilities, next year's liabilities, that are $235,000 more than current assets. As I said, we know accounts payable right now is overstated, but one of the large current liabilities is the $272,000 that the water fund owes to the natural gas fund. Both the water fund and the natural gas fund had negative operating income. As an enterprise fund is set up to break even and to get enough fees in to be able to pay its expenses, operating income should always be positive. Actual expenditures exceeded budgeted expenditures in the water, general, and natural gas funds. For the water fund, the expenditures were $61,000 more than the budget. And this is about a third of the amounts which were budgeted. As I said earlier, the board should review budget to actual financial statements on an interim basis. If it appears that a fund is going to have actual expenditures in excess of the amounts budgeted, it should formally do a supplemental appropriation, which requires all of the publications and all of the work that adopting the original budget did. In note 3 to the financial statements, it talks about cash and investments. And what you can see is that the actual bank balance, again, is $20,000 less than the book balance. And the collar trust balance is $60,000 less than the book balance. The town also has a significant amount of restricted cash, and it needs to determine what that exact amount of restricted cash is, and then ensure that those amounts are funded. Again, as I said earlier, the water fund owes a significant amount to the gas fund, but so does the general fund. It owes the gas fund about $150,000. This was the first year, 2022, that the general fund actually had a cash balance to where that amount could be paid off. And finally, again, if I were a board member, what is reported in note 9 would worry me a lot. And what's there, as we talked about last year, is compliance with USDA and federal grant requirements. The feds, the USDA, may determine that amounts were not spent correctly, and they may ask the town to repay those amounts. And that could be significant and a heavy financial burden on the town. So that is one thing we know the trustees are keeping their eyes on. But again, we think that is a very important issue. That, in summary, is our presentation of the 2022 audit. Are there any questions? Once the board approves this draft and we get the management representation letter back from the town, we will file this audit with the state auditor's office, and hopefully you can get some more property taxes. Because of the issue of not recording electronic deposits or withdrawals in 2021, we are going to have to adjust the 2021 balances and reissue that audit report. Again, that is really the summary of what we would like to tell the board.
Excuse me, can you tell us what page we're on again, please?
We're done.
He's done. He's done with this.
See you guys looking all over.
Oh, no, I'm looking for, to present it to the board for acceptance. I was just looking for the letter. Are you still there, Jim Ray?
Oh, yes, I'm still here.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Ray? No questions?
No.
Hopefully we can start off the new year a lot better.
So he's gonna start eventually on 23. And I'm sure it's gonna be, I mean, we're still gonna have missing information and whatnot. But everything that we have, we're supplying it to him.
And again, I cannot emphasize enough how your financial statement auditor is probably going to have to do a compliance audit of the USDA monies. And that is a fairly significant audit.
So is that really gonna hurt us a lot?
Yeah, I think so, because again, everything that we said that was a material weakness in the audit opinion and in the material weakness letter is going to have to be reported to the feds. In addition to that, we're going to have to tell them about the internal control systems of the town and whether they are effective, properly designed, and properly implemented. If your auditor comes to the conclusion that either they are not properly designed or they are not properly implemented, then that also has to be reported to the feds. I do think it could be an issue with getting funding in grant funding in future years. And the town's also going to have to write a corrective action plan to the feds and tell them how the problems are going to be corrected, when they're going to be corrected, and when they're going to be corrected.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ray.
I'm sorry?
Thank you.
Thank you. If anyone has any questions, please let us know. Mayor, would you please send us an email if the board approves this audit, and we will get it wrapped up and sent to the state?
As soon as I get their vote on the acceptance of this audit, I will send you the letter. So if you don't get it tonight, you will have it in the morning.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time.
I think motion we accept it because what else are we gonna do?
And with that respect, I ask the board to accept the 2022 audit as is.
I'll make a motion.
I already did.
Or you did, well, I second it.
We accept it.
I second it.
That's it.
Bless you. Roll call? We don't have time to sneeze.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes.
Mr. Brojas,
Yes.
Ms. Galvin,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Romero,
Yes.
Mr. Trio.
Yes. Do you think that the IRS or the Colorado auditing department is going to buy into this thing?
They've accepted our audit. Now, I have a letter, and we gotta find it, a letter to the board and it's from, Crystal Dorsey. And it was sent to the town back in November, and it was on the 2019 audit. And, he called me last Friday and she resent it because we never received it. And I told her the town does not do, home delivery.
Nope.
So apparently it was sent back. So I have till the 18th to come up with a plan, just like Jim Ray just said now. So I have till then to get it done and submit it to the state. And so he just, and I can get together with him to work this out, to send it to him. But yeah, Crystal knows, she's aware of the fact that we have a lot of missing information. And that's what's held up the audits and.
Yeah.
You know, it's gonna take you ladies, not us, you and the ladies in the office. It's gonna be a while before you're out from under the previous shadows.
It's gonna take a while. Long
The,
time.
he anticipates the end of May, for 2023. And on 2024, we know pretty much what he's asked for on audit, so we're good there. I mean, I'm not saying that it's gonna be perfect, but I know that from September of last year going forward, there's been a lot of documentation, they've done a lot of research and, you know, like I said, Sarah has spent a lot of time doing, you know, the entries into the,
Budgets.
yeah. And then Stephanie has been working on the others, and there's a lot of stuff that both of these girls know and they've been doing and, you know, well, not know, but they've had to learn. It's been hard, but they've done it.
Yeah.
They've done a good job. And I thank them.
Definitely.
So next time, if nobody has any questions, we can go on to water line on Aspen, and you have a picture of it.
Right here.
Yes. At the back of your,